But yeah, each traditional business function is going to have a part to play in that extended workforce management and what that could look like. So to come back to legislation changes and what's coming, what would be the first step? Because it seems to me that companies are already beginning to stumble just on that basis of who needs to pick this up and who needs to drive this, understand what this means for my business, and take this forward. And perhaps the answer to that question is no one unit is responsible. You are collectively all responsible. And this is what that governance could look like. Get your feet under you there first in terms of putting the right governance in place, the right roles and responsibilities, and then you can look at that legislation in probably a more 360-degree way.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of, I think that's probably how the government wants a lot of these organisations to feel. I think all of this stuff, if you bundle it up, is with that in mind, like as the end goal. And it's how do we erode this sense of, oh, we have plausible deniability about this stuff. Like that's down the supply chain. That's not really for us to worry about. Or they have this sort of inherent peace of mind that a different organisation is soaking up all their risk. I think the government is trying to chip away at that and erode that and say, no, the buck stops here. And this is how we're going to enforce that. Most of this policy that I've seen coming through, everything that we've discussed so far, has that sort of end goal in mind of making people more accountable. So the big challenge for organisations is going to be, okay, so if we've been told we're going to own this and the risk is coming upstream to sit on our lap, then where does that put us? What do we do to soak that up, to manage it, to mitigate it? That's like the overarching theme that I see with all of these pieces of legislation. They're trying to obviously close budget holes and generate more tax revenue, but crucially, they're trying to make businesses more responsible for this stuff.
At the end of the day, the end client is the one utilising that labour. They do have a certain responsibility on their shoulders, even if we think about, extended workers and their onboarding experience. I've heard some hellish things. Of course, we spend some time working with end clients on improving that onboarding experience and making sure that it's as it should be, so that people get a great first impression of your company and can go on to say great things about it. But at the end of the day, there's still a lot of work to be done in those areas. But there's great opportunities that come with it. The compliance bugbear, yes, there's complexity there, but the same with all things which are complex, you bite it off in one small chunk at a time, underpin it and move on. Transparency has got to be right up there with the governance of who owns this, the hot potato. Is got to be how do I achieve workforce transparency? Now much easier with technology being what it is, right? And the developments that we've seen in that area. We don't always have to go out and invest in a VMS just to get workforce transparency. Lots of different ways of achieving those things. The key thing I would say is try to make those processes that you're enabling centrally as supplier-centric as possible, because otherwise what you'll get is not timely submissions or accurate submissions, and it's kind of garbage in, garbage out still, in my view, when it comes to data, right? But number one, governance. Understand the hot potato. Number two, get yourself some visibility and start with the basics rather than trying to boil the ocean. Start with what you need to be able to understand who's working for you, what sort of work they're doing, where are they deployed, and what sort of contract have you got underpinning? What is that supply chain, to your point? And I think you've touched a little bit on the other big change outside of the employment rights bill is, of course, the umbrella company change that's happening there around getting deeper transparency into your supply chain to understand if your umbrella companies and everyone else in the chain there is paying the right amount of tax at the end of the day. Otherwise, going forward, end client also exposed as well to some of those penalties.
Yeah, and it won't be the last piece of legislation. There's
a big long list, honestly.
Some of the things we do know is that we're going to have joint and several liability in the supply chain, which means that organisations can't have plausible deniability anymore about tax risk and liability. They have to understand their supply chain. They have to have visibility and control of it, which my many years of auditing organisations' contingent labour workforce tells me they do not. It's in fact very rare, and that's including organisations that have VMSs in, freelancer management systems in, and MSPs. In fact, all of those different solutions and products really probably just further muddy the water. They can serve up the data, but without someone independent sitting in the centre of that, pulling all that together and giving you a transparent report, it's really difficult to understand where your liability sits. But
You're also going to be looking for that liability as well. To your point, I like the word independent there. And one of the things that I have seen in the industry in the last couple of years is many independents, right? Agnostic folks popping up who are here to help the end client. You know, no longer is it the day that you have to either rely on one of the big consultancy firms to give you some recommendations which you can't implement, right? Or to rely upon your recruitment partners or talent solution companies who MSP solutions and these types of things to be able to give you that advice. First off, that advice is out there. And if you just spend a little bit of time, I know there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn as well, but if you spend a little bit of time, you can find some gems in there in terms of companies that are really trying to solve for this, and be that middleman, right? Be that support to the end client who needs impartial advice, who's actually going to look at your problem and say, yeah, I understand it. Here are your options around the table to solve for this, right? How do you want me to get you connected? And that's a little bit of light relief, honestly, to see in this industry. There's lots of good folks who are really trying to do right here, and it's not about making a buck, but actually about really doing right, not just for the end client, but also for the industry, right? Where we're going to go next, making sure that candidates and people can work in the way that they want to, but also making that right for business. So
it's nothing nefarious, right? Your suppliers often will be doing a really good job. I work for a massive tech company, and when it came to sort of prove ROI, I was happily able to do so. But I was also working towards my own sort of sales funnel rather than the goals of the organization, because that's the nature of suppliers, right? And that, as you said, agnostic, neutral specialist in the center of that can really stitch things together and give you objective advice and strategy and support.
Yeah, well, they win, you win, I think, is the good thing about the independence, really. There is no conflict there, where, you might work for a business that's moving in opposite direction. I always say with recruitment firms, just look at how their folks are incentivized, and that'll tell you what sort of service you're going to get, right? If they're incentivized on bums on seats, as I put it, then what you're going to get is a very transactional service, because that's how those folks are making their money. There's lots of different options now around the table, to your point, and the industry is chocker full of people who can help clients with these types of problems. So in order to wrap up, I guess where we are today. We've got a movable fees in terms of extended workforce. We've got a lack of ownership or lack of clear definition in terms of ownership, what that could look like. We've got legislation change coming, right? The cusp of change, as we know, is coming. And we know kind of what that looks like a little bit into the future. With that, there's a lot of opportunity that comes with it. Get it right now. You'll be well ahead of the game and ahead of your competitors, right? And able to tap into all the benefits of a flexible workforce whilst knowing that you're safe and compliant and walking in step with those legislation changes. But, what would be the one wish that we had, right, as industry professionals working in this space? I know from my side, I've got a slogan which I've been coming back to, which is, start now, move steadily, and arrive early, because, April 2026 will arrive very quickly. That might be when the Fair Work Agency is launched, but they have a charter. It will come thick and fast. And in my experience, even underpinning where you are today and holding the mirror up, your current state can take a little bit of time, right? Yeah. Understanding where you are today, without then having to design processes, change things, implement new systems and ways of working to be able to be on the right side of compliance by the time it actually gets here.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Because you're essentially running diagnostics and systems and processes and policies that have evolved over generations, in some cases, like decades and decades of legacy exist in these organizations and businesses. So if you want to hold up a mirror and say, right, what's the state of play? You don't want to do that in March 2026 because you won't have the runway to get your ducks in a row. There's not enough time. It's definitely something you want to start as soon as possible. I would love to see organizations start to bring this into scope and really assign ownership. I see a future as the workforce moves more and more in this direction. I can see a future where organizations start putting in situ a role or a position who is dedicated to this stuff. And that's a little way away, but I would love organisations to start thinking those terms of who owns this part of our workforce, in the same way that we have HR teams that are responsible for so much already. They're already responsible for everything from the summer party to offboarding. Like the array of tasks is enormous. But to add this, I think it is a massive ask. This is some sort of specialist knowledge that just needs to be injected.
And I don't think they can do it, honestly. I don't think any one function can do it alone. I always come back to this analogy of the conductor in the orchestra. Yeah. So, you know, HR is your string section, you know, procurement, perhaps they're your percussion, you know, and you need a conductor, to your point, a conductor in the middle that can work cross-functionally, that's not actually, doesn't have a list of objectives, which is siloed from the rest, but really working under the corporate strategy. Because this is what, at the end of the day, we're talking about workforces. Really at that C-suite level, it's how do I orchestrate my workforce so that I can drive, you know, a maximum benefit, right, and get ahead of the competition. It's probably as simple as that. In order to do that, a conductor in the middle, bringing all these folks together, right, and now it's your turn to play, and over here you're managing this, but getting that dance moving, for want of a better one, but would be really powerful. And yeah, we are starting to see some change there. So I am actually seeing more job descriptions pop up for those types of roles, although I don't like the word job description very much. Again, coming back to flexible work, perhaps we should be focusing more on the skills needed for that conductor role, right, to be able to understand who would be best fit. But certainly exciting role.
I mean, the opportunity off the back of this stuff, of taking it seriously and putting it in scope and acting on this, the opportunities go way beyond not going to compliance prison and fines. Like, the opportunities are enormous. There's a huge talent pool full of amazing cutting edge skills, people that have moved project to project, like cutting edge technology to cutting edge technology. They've been working with the biggest, best organizations and brands in the world. And you can deploy them in a controlled, sort of cost-controlled manner to ensure that their deliverable-based output is going to bring you the productivity that you need. There's such an exciting opportunity for organisations that grab this. And if this sort of liability and risk and legislation piece is a catalyst for that, it can only be a good thing.
I mean, I just had in mind when you were talking there, I had an image in my head of a field beyond with all different sorts of exciting things growing in that looks really lush, and a massive gate to get over, right? And we're all just stuck at that gate going, oh, that's the compliance gate that we all have to climb our way up. And it seems really tough to get over it because it's massive and it's diverse and it's got nails sticking out of it. And there's a few people that have already fallen off that are in the news. But, you know, there are folks out there to openly, like what we're trying to do and partnering with FreeFlexer, and there's many others around the table that are all coming together here to help build that ladder so that, you know, customers can get on that and openly simplify that journey, because that lovely field is beyond where we can all sit and have a little chill once we've got there and think about that awful climb. And we'll look back at some point of all those compliance nightmares and say, actually, it wasn't quite so bad as we thought it was going to be. And look where we've managed to get to. But yeah, from me, I think the clear message is can't do it alone. Got to do it with mates around the table. And yeah, we have opportunities, certainly when we're working with customers on a day-to-day, start to build that empathy between the teams so that they can take that journey on together.
What a brilliant, lovely utopian note you finished on.
I've painted that picture. So it's where I go in my dreams every evening. It's exactly the utopia that it could be. The world of work doesn't have to be painful, honestly. No. If you can connect people with the sort of work that they find rewarding in a way that works for them in their lifestyle, then we all win. Really, businesses will win because people will be more productive, and I'm a big fan of that. So.